You are listening to Smart Women's Dating Podcast, episode number 89. Welcome to Smart Women's Dating Podcast. I am your host, certified life coach Lærke Nielsen, and I help smart, independent women attract the love they deeply desire without having to chase or settle. This podcast will give you the mindset, tools, and insights you need to finally crack the code to your love life. Are you ready? Then let's go. Hi there. Being secure in dating. That's the topic of today. And I know that a lot of you want to work on this. You have identified as having anxious tendencies or maybe even anxious attachment style. And you want to change that. You want to have tools and strategies to overcome or manage this anxiety when it creeps in, whether that is in early dating or inside a long-term relationship. But before we get started on the topic of today, I have an important announcement to make. Now, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know I've been talking a lot about this group program that I'm going to launch very soon. And actually, I've just opened the doors to sign up to this program now. So if you have been on the fence, if you've been considering doing this, and you want to learn something about feminine energy that you can use in dating and inside a relationship, then you have your chance now. The doors are only open until Friday evening, the 23rd of August. So Friday, midnight, Pacific time, US. That's where I'm closing the registrations. So depending on when you are listening, you still have a chance to get in. And I'm going to put a link in the show notes to the page where you have all the information. I put all the dates, the times, the content of each of the sessions, and of course the investment. And just to make it absolutely clear, this is a really great offer because the price of the course is €275. And you will get a bonus session with me one-to-one, and you will get a chance to apply a credit of €200 towards another program. So, if I may say so myself, it's actually an amazing offer. And there are already several smart women out there who realize that and who signed up, but you still can join if you're fast. So you have until Friday night, 23rd of August, and the link is in the show note. Go jump in there, book your spot, and I'll see you inside. It's going to be such a great experience for everyone. We're going to create a great community of women who are supporting each other, learning about this stuff, asking all your questions, getting all my insight and practical advice to whatever situation you experience in dating. So I can't wait to meet you. Jump on the link, sign up, and I'll see you inside. Today is going to be about being secure in dating and especially in early dating. And I want to first talk about what it means to be secure and what it means to not be secure. What are the differences and how does it show up in our behaviors? And also I'm going to talk a little bit about why we are not secure. What are the reasons behind? So I am a person who likes to understand both myself and the people around me. And I think it's very useful, even if it's not always enough. It's useful to have the intellectual understanding of why we do the way we do, why we have the patterns we have. The insight, the self-awareness, is always the first step to give ourselves the understanding and compassion, and then see how we can change the things that are not serving us. So we will do that first, and then I'll give you both some practical steps to become more secure and some deeper ways you can work on it, going into your mindset and changing the way you perceive a situation and think of yourself to get a better way of managing the anxiety. But first, what does it mean to be secure in dating? A secure person is not untouchable, and it's not like they are not vulnerable at all. There's no such thing as being rejection or heartbreak proof. Securely attached people know that there's always a risk of having their heart broken when they enter into an emotional deep connection, a romantic relationship, or even just in dating. However, they also know that they have their own back, and if someone were to not choose them, they don't make it mean something negative about themselves. They know that they are always worthy and lovable, and that cannot change just because someone doesn't choose them. They also know that it's better to let go of someone who doesn't themselves want to be in a relationship with them. They might feel really sad about the rejection and they might resist it for a moment, but they are faster in realizing that it's time to let go, and they don't get stuck in painful thinking about how everything would be better if the other person would stay. So they will not start convincing or chasing someone who doesn't show them interest. For a securely attached person, someone who doesn't give them the attention and shows them the level of interest that they want from a partner, that does not feel interesting to them. They can easier make the conclusion that this is just not for me and then walk away without feeling hopeless about their future love life. They might take a couple of days and soothe their pain, but they don't get stuck in trying to win over or win back the other person. On the other hand, when we are anxious, we tend to delegate a lot of our worth to the other person, believing that if only they like me and want me, I can feel good enough, I can relax. If the other person starts to lose interest, I have to work to get it back. I can't lose it because that would mean I am lost. I am not lovable. I am not good enough. So my whole existence is at stake, and I'm in a way giving a lot of responsibility to another person that I just met. We might not think the thoughts consciously. This is not what is running through your brain on a conscious level, but this could be what is driving you on a deeper level. And the way it shows up is that usually anxious people are very good at empathy. We're very good at tuning into others and trying to figure out exactly where they are. Because when we're scared of losing someone's love, we feel that we constantly have to adapt to where they are and make sure that we're not losing it. We are typically very conscious about others' needs, again, to make sure that they feel okay and therefore they stay with us. And also, we can be very focused on others' opinions. So what does he think about me? Does he like me? And so on. And much less, what do I think of him? Do I even like him? It's actually typical to not know very well our own needs and feelings. We can't really say why we want the other person to stay with us, except it would be too painful if they didn't. And we are also not very attuned to feeling our own boundaries either, because our focus is very external. So the way it shows up in dating is that you can be confident all the way until you meet someone, and then once you start liking them and they show you the same feelings back, now all of a sudden you have something to lose. And this can make you prone to feeling anxious and worry that they're gonna leave you or they're gonna lose interest in you and so on. And that can be whether you notice signs of that or not. It can be completely spontaneous just because you feel so lucky that you met him. But you can also have an increased alertness and unconsciously look out for all the signs that something could be off. And it's basically coming from this assumption that if something is off, you have to course correct. You have to make sure that it all gets back into order again so you don't lose his love. And you might seek his validation in different ways, and that can be very subtle. For instance, sending him a text message with the only purpose of confirming to yourself that he's still into you. You can become overly controlling of yourself and what you say and do. You limit yourself and you try to be strategic about everything you do when you are around him. And you are very focused on where he is. You let him and his mood decide how you feel. And also, you are, of course, very sensitive to changes in his behavior, so you notice even the smallest things and you spend a lot of time ruminating about what that means. Like, for instance, he took a bit longer to respond to my last message, or I think the tone was a little bit off. He didn't seem as happy to see me today as he usually is, and so on. Now, something that can just put gasoline on the fire here is if he is a bit avoidant. That would trigger your anxiety. You will in particular feel triggered if you sense a man is pulling away. And we can't always say exactly when is he pulling away. He might not feel that himself, he might just need a bit of space, but to you it feels very triggering. Now, it's important to say here that an attachment style is not a diagnosis and is also not permanent. You can work on it and it can change with new relationship experiences. It doesn't serve you to identify yourself with the attachment style as such. It's more like a tendency or a disposition. And it's very important to understand that the interaction you have with another person can be activating one or the other attachment style in you. You could be securely attached with someone who is 100% showing up and themselves secure, whereas even the most secure person can start to feel anxious with someone avoidant. So sometimes you also have to take a look at whether this other person and the interaction you have with them is actually serving you long term. If they constantly trigger your anxiety, even if it's not their intention, if you feel uncertain even after a long time, this might not be the right person for your nervous system. So what is the core reasons we have anxious attachment style? There can be several reasons, and it can develop from a relationship you had earlier in life. But often the explanation you find when you look up attachment styles is that there was no consistency in your access to love and attention in early childhood. So that means that you sometimes had love and you sometimes felt secure, and then all of a sudden you no longer had love and you no longer felt secure. It wasn't completely absent, but it wasn't there on a consistent basis as you needed it to be. So the beliefs we form in our head when we grow up with that is that love is scarce. There isn't enough. It's sometimes here and sometimes not. And I have to grab onto it when it's there, or I'll lose it and I can't lose it because it's crucial for my emotional survival. And when you were a small child, you couldn't tell yourself that your parents were not doing their job. Instead, what you tell yourself is that there's something wrong with you. You are not worthy or fully deserving of love. Only partly and only sometimes. So there you can see having a basic belief, whether it's conscious or not, that I am not deserving of love. I have to work for it. I have to grab onto it because it's only a matter of time before it will go away again. And then meeting someone who's a bit avoidant, you can see how this triggers your childhood wounds and spikes the anxiety. And in many situations, it really has nothing to do with that other person. He is just triggering the anxiety that is already there. Okay, so how do you start changing that? You might think that the only way forward is to do some really deep work and go back to your childhood and so on, and maybe some therapist will have that approach, and maybe it is useful for some of you. But I just want to offer to you that you don't have to completely 100% heal yourself before you can have a healthy love life. You don't have to heal all your wounds. We all have something and we get new wounds to heal throughout life. So I don't want you to put that pressure on yourself that you need to be fully and 100% healed before you can even imagine going back to dating or having a healthy relationship. I think what is much more important is that you know your wounds. You get familiar with them and you know how to recognize your patterns and style. So that when you feel anxious in a new dating connection, you are able to say, oh, I see what's happening now. This is me reacting to those little signs that may or may not mean anything, but it's really coming from a wounded place in me, the part of me that believes I'm not lovable. And instead of reacting externally right now, then you can choose to take a deep breath and remind yourself that no man can ever take away your lovability. It is just not in their power. So now I'm going to give you some behavior or habit shifts that might seem superficial at a first glance, but these are places you can start doing the work and that will feed back to your brain and indirectly change how you think and feel. And then afterwards, I will give you the mindset tools that you can use to go deeper. So first of all, some concrete shifts that you can do in your dating behavior. In the early stages of dating, so the first couple of months, you can choose to date multiple men at the time. This will help you avoid over-focusing on one. Avoid being overly attached to one person. At the same time, and this will come almost automatically if you are dating several at the time, you want to practice slow dating so that you see the same person maximum once per week or every 10 days or so. And when you date several men, of course, you don't want to be physically intimate with anyone before you feel that this is going where you want it to go and you know him well enough to say that you feel compatible with him. And that can take something like at least 10 to 15 dates or 3 months. At the same time, it's very important how you live your life outside of dating. You basically want to always live your best life, so the best life you can possibly have under your current circumstances. It is really important for your general emotional well-being that you have an exciting purpose in life, something that gives your life meaning, that you feel passionate about, and that is more or equally important to a man. And you want to cultivate friendships, sports, hobbies, career, everything outside dating, as they will ground you and will make you more emotionally resilient. Being with friends who confirm that you are wanted, you are worthy, and you are lovable as a friend is very important, and unfortunately is something we tend to put on the back burner if we meet a new interesting guy. But don't do that. Be sure to prioritize your friendships. And then I want you to work on your mindset as well. And this is first of all about self-validation. Because when we go into anxious mode, it's because we believe that losing someone's love and attention means that we are not lovable. As if it was up to someone else. We give away that power. So you want to just notice when it's happening. Become an expert in your own anxiety. Find the thoughts behind it and then question them. Ask yourself why you are afraid that he's losing interest. What if he did? Then what would that mean? Now, if your answer is that if he lost interest, I will be forever alone, or I will never meet someone like that again, or I will think I'm not good enough, is that really true? What if the real truth, or another truth, is just that he isn't right for you? That someone else is still out there and you only want a man in your life who wants to be there himself, who is all in on being there. And if he isn't, then it could be that you were wrong about him. You thought he was the one, but it turns out he isn't. And that is okay because someone else is out there for you. You can also try to imagine if someone else were thinking that about you losing interest in them. Imagine you lost interest in a man, and then he believed he wasn't lovable or he wasn't good enough as a human being. Then what would you say to him? How would you guide him? So you want to go to the worst case scenario that he actually did lose interest and then take the drama out of it. And then you want to come back to yourself and your values and remember that you can live a perfectly happy life as a single woman. And finding someone is not urgent. You are already complete and your life can be an exciting journey if you choose to see it like this, if you choose to work on your life and improve your life all the time. You do not need a man to validate your worth. And remind yourself that nobody's actions can reflect your lovability as a person. Him not answering a text, it doesn't mean anything about you. It only means something about him. So even if you feel great about yourself when you're around him and you have this experience that they make you feel seen and heard and important, this is actually all created by your thoughts. Notice how your thoughts about yourself change when they give you a compliment or show you a lot of attention and that they like you. Notice how you think about yourself and how that changes how you feel about yourself. And then remind yourself that you can have these thoughts anyway. It's all within your control, and you don't need a man to validate you as a woman. Of course, it's easier to feel great about yourself when someone you like and respect gives you a compliment or shows you in their actions that they appreciate you. But it's not necessary for you to feel good about yourself. And then be aware that even if you do have an anxious attachment style, it's not useful to tell yourself that it's all in your head, because you are indeed responding to another person's behavior, and you want to pay attention to whether this interaction is really serving you. Because you can't have a situation where both things are at play. He is actually not showing up for the connection, and you are also anxious. You can have anxious attachment style and want to work on this and know that you are particularly sensitive for different cues and still decide to not want to continue this dating connection because you don't want the kind of relationship where you are triggered every other week. So even if you realize that a lot of your anxiety is coming from your early childhood wounds and you do want to work on that, you also don't want a partner who's pulling away on the regular. You can coach yourself very far, but why should you if you can find a partner that feels good to your nervous system and where you don't need to coach yourself all the time? Do not disregard everything you feel with, "It's just my anxiety." And then the last thing I want to say here is I want to say a few words about the difference between dating anxiety and relationship anxiety. Because in dating, you don't know the person that well yet, and you can't always tell if he's pulling away or if this is just his natural cycle and he needs to breathe after some intense weeks together, for instance. And we can be very sensitive in the beginning where we still feel a lot of uncertainty. So him answering late on a message or where we send a different tone, that can easily be misconceived as him pulling away, when in reality he might not be. So you don't want to get super attached early on. He's still someone you just met. If a lack of response at this time is causing you to feel a lot of anxiety, you need to address that in yourself first and all. And that's why I don't recommend that you necessarily address a pulling away directly and ask him what's going on in early dating. If you address things directly and head on every time you feel that he's pulling away, and at a time where you can't really say you know him well enough to know if that is what's happening, you risk getting a response that will just create even more anxiety. Like if you ask, "Are we on the same page?" or "I feel you're pulling away. Are you not that much into this anymore?" Most likely at this stage, he is not 100% certain because he also just met you, and he could be hesitating to confirm that he's all in. He could be confused about your question if he doesn't think he's been pulling away. So then that leaves you with having addressed it directly and gotten a hesitating response, which could make you feel even more anxious. Did he lose interest in me? Is he 10% less into me than 2 weeks ago? What did I do to make this happen? How can I get him back on 100% again? All these could be thoughts that show up if you don't feel a clear and 100% certain validation here. Or if you address that he's pulling away and he didn't feel that he pulled away, he just needed a bit of space, then he might feel restricted or that you are controlling him, and he could start worrying if he can give you enough attention for you to feel okay. Let's say he just needed 2 or 3 days where he focused on friends and other projects in life, and he gets the impression that this makes you unhappy. He might question whether it can work on a longer term. However, if you were to be together on a longer term, like 6 months and longer, and you feel someone pulling away and trigger your anxiety, you have to address that. Here you can say with more certainty if someone has changed their behavior. So if you do see him pulling away and it's making you anxious, you should have a talk about it. So that was it for today, and I hope you found it useful. I do a lot of this work with clients, so if you feel this is resonating and you want support in becoming more secure and confident in your love life, whether you are dating or in a relationship, I can help you do that. You don't have to do this alone. So reach out and book a free consult call on the link in the show notes, and let's connect. Have a wonderful and joyful week, everyone, wherever you are in your love life. If you like what you're hearing on this podcast and you want to get support from a coach on your love journey, I invite you to book a free consult call with me. You will find the link in the show notes. And also, don't forget to subscribe, and I would love it if you would rate and review this podcast, and then you'll also help other women find it.